Hello.
Hello,
Hi, how's it going?
how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
Oh, not a problem, man.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's great to be able to talk to you. The last time I was able to talk to you was all the way back in 2012 in Minnesota when you were touring with Municipal Waste. So it's great to be able to catch up after all this time. A lot of great things, a lot of bad things have happened since then worldwide, but it's great to see that things are kind of hopefully going to be on an upswing, at least musically, with this amazing tour that's still lined up coming up here in America with GWAR.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking to myself for a second, was that municipal waste tour like that long ago, 2012? God, and that's a few years, you know. But yeah, I mean, we've been in a quite lucky position. We've already been to the States once this month, playing. So yeah, this tour looks like it's kind of coming at the right time, where it's not at great risk of kind of falling apart before it starts. So yeah, it looks like everything's going to go as planned, more or less.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping it stays that way too, because obviously with the worldwide, I mean, there's so many things you could say about that, but just focusing directly musically, I mean, this is such an amazing tour uh, that is lined up here, and it's great to see the diversity. I mean, every time that I'm ever able to see you guys, I mean, it always seems like you guys are on such a killer bill and you're able to work with so many different kinds of bands. I mean, whether like it is Municipal Waste, whether it is like Voivod, whether it's GWAR, I mean, it really feels like you guys are always able to fit into a great bill.
Sure. I mean, when we're arranging our own tours as the closing band or whatever, we always take great care to try and think up something that will artistically, creatively be spread across the board. That's interesting. Rather than kind of doing the obvious, we kind of try and take a leaf out of how we approach Napalm Death when we're making new music or making artwork. You don't just find something that portrays just a standardized version of what people think they should get from you. You always try and think a little bit more deeply than that. So, and I think Napalm also has a very wide palette of influence, and a very wide palette of the constituent sounds, within it as a band. So therefore, when you have that, we're able to reach out to a lot more different bands. For example, we did that tour with the Melvins, in the States 3, 4, 5 years ago it was now, and that was perfect for us. It was actually the perfect bill. So yeah, we're very fortunate in that respect. We seem to have be able to get a reference point in many different sort of collections of bands, so that's good for us. So
Oh, definitely. And I'm glad to see that the creativity and the diversity is still going on strong within the band. I mean, especially with last year's album and the throes of the joy throws and the defeatism. I mean, it's just like being able to hear that great Napalm Death sound, but also being able to show off different sides throughout the album as well too. I mean, I really appreciate that it can go into a lot of different hills and valleys musically, what's going on, and even changing things up a little bit more than what people might imagine.
yeah, sure. I mean, the thing is that to us, what we did with Throws and also the album before it, is to us it's kind of natural. It is very diverse, and but the thing is that to us all the very, when you break it down into different influences that are on there, to us that's always been there. Those things have always been there. It's just within yourself. You're always learning as a musician, as an artist or whatever, and you learn to portray things better with experience. I think, you know, how to portray them and make them just more, I guess, more more easily portrayed, I suppose. So yeah, it's just a learning process, really. Look, say anything you find on that last album, you could have found on any albums before it. You know, it's just that we, you know, with time, you're always learning, you're always finding better ways to do things. You know, so
Yeah, you know, with that, I mean, I'm glad to see that, you know, like the spirit of still wanting to be able to do that is still going strong with 2020, and I imagine beyond as well too, when the next release will be coming out. I mean, when you've been together for so long and you still have that drive to want to be able to continue to improve yourself, it's a great thing.
I mean, for us, we wouldn't do it if that was the case. You know, that the idea of putting out something generic just for the sake of it, I mean, that's just not for us, you know. And we don't intend to do that. I mean, the important thing is that we continue to move forward without losing the spontaneity, the abrasiveness of the band. That has to be there. Well, it doesn't have to. It's because we want it to be there. You know, I don't want to make a Napalm album that isn't like brimming with distortion, you know, because that's what it is. That's what Napalm Death is. You know, it's my natural state of doing things now. I've been in Napalm Death for 30 years. You know, I don't want to play in this band with the edges kind of polished off. Not interested in doing that. You know, I always want to make music that's confrontational, both lyrically and musically, and that, you know, has an essence of creativity to it. You know, that's what I want to do, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And as a fan, I mean, that's what always brought me into the band is when you do have those lyrics, when you do have those vocals, when you do have that stage presence and you're able to have that confrontational style and not being afraid to say what is really on your mind. I mean, whether it's on stage, whether it's vocals, whether it's in interviews. I mean, I always appreciate that.
Yeah, shouldn't not nobody should ever be afraid, you know what I mean, to say these things. I mean, especially not from, you know, from my perspective, because I mean, if referring directly to the lyrics, I mean, these are all human issues. So if you think about it, it would be absolutely crazy to be afraid of speaking up about human issues. Do you know what I mean? That the whole notion of that just seems absurd to me, you know, to not be able to speak up, you know. Yeah, really.
Oh, for sure. So, you know, thinking about that as well, too, I mean, obviously with being able to play some shows recently, I mean, what is it like now, like after not being able to play for a while, you know, worldwide? I mean, what is it like now to be able to get back on that stage and, you know, at least trying to get back into the touring life cycle?
Yeah, I mean, we've done 2 gigs since we were able to do 2 gigs, since, you know, the gigs that we were planning on doing weren't getting cancelled, you know. So we've done 2 gigs. Speaking for myself, it felt really good. You know, it just felt like I was kind of, not to over dramatize it, but I felt like I was reborn again a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it just felt really good. I mean, the touring life cycle is not hard to adjust to in and of itself, but obviously I think people would understand that with this GWAR tour being 39 dates in 50 days, it's not like doing the Decibel Festival where it's 1 gig and therefore the sort of persistent risks of COVID, well, percentage wise, probability wise, nothing's going to happen in 1 or 2 days. The 1 or 2 days you spent in Philadelphia. But of course, if you're out on a tour for 50 days, the chances of anything happening in terms of, you know, COVID stuff is significantly higher. So there is some very rigid like protocols that we've got to follow on this tour. But that's, you know, that's that's not a bad thing, you know, because what certainly what Napalm Death doesn't need as an overseas band, kind of stuck in America. What we don't want is for one of us to catch it and then you have to quarantine in a place for 10 days. And the tour is going to move on. Of course it is. You know, it's not going to wait behind for one member from a band that's not headlining. You know, it's going to move on. So, you know, obviously we're going to try our best to observe protocols, you know, distancing stuff, caution over going places that are crowded where we don't need to as individuals, you know. So yeah, that's the way it'll be. So you know, that it's not a problem. You know, it's definitely not like a normal US tour where you'd, you know, footloose and fancy free, you'd sort of, you know, run around all over the place. Now you can't necessarily do that, but you know, that's the way it is for now. So
Yeah, I mean, if it means that a tour can go successfully where no one in any band or anyone a part of the road crews are getting COVID and things are able to go successful, I mean, if you do have to have those restrictions on there, it's obviously for the best. And just being able to get back on the stages again, I mean, it's got to be that great feeling too. I
yeah.
imagine with that first show that you did back and you were able to get right into that first song, I can't imagine a greater feeling when you're a musician.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to say that I was absolutely terrified before the gig. I mean, I've always suffered from stage fright. I've always had it ever since. You know, after 30 years, I still suffer from it. You know, before I'm kind of a bag of nerves. You know, before I play any gig at all, doesn't matter what it is. You know, I'm always like super nervous. I think it's just the anxiety of, you know, not doing the best that I intend to do, you know what I mean, when I go out on stage. You know, I think that's the thing for me. So yeah, I mean, when we came back again, yeah, it was definitely a great feeling. I mean, I do want to say this, obviously, on a bigger tour like that GWAR tour, the bands have, especially GWAR, you know, they have a lot of crew guys that have no choice but to be in crowded spaces. You know, they're more likely to come into contact with that. So I mean, obviously, first thing is that hopefully all the crew guys are okay. You know what I mean? Everybody that's working, you know, is able to stay COVID free. You know, that's first and foremost. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with how many times I've seen GWAR, I mean, it takes so much effort to be able to get the stage shows that they have, and it takes all of those road crew members to be able to make that happen. So, obviously, health-wise, making sure that everyone's going to be okay, and just
Sure.
having to go through so many things to be able to make things go and in normal circumstances, let alone in what we're still dealing with a pandemic nearly 2 years later.
Sure.
It's just so many things that go into it. And yeah, just like you said, making sure that the road crew is okay, making sure that you guys are going to be okay, and
Yeah.
making sure that fans, if they are feeling sick or anything, just making sure that they stay home to make sure that everyone else is going to be okay as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that totally. Yeah, you know, I mean, be responsible for other people. It's, you know, a lot of this issue is about, you know, you're taking other people into consideration. I mean, obviously, if you're not feeling good, and you know, the symptoms of COVID have been well publicised by now. I think everybody generally knows. So if you're feeling like that, just don't go to the gig. You know what I mean? Don't be selfish. You know, like stay away. You know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been about 2 years since the last time I was able to make it to a show. But if I'm not able to make it to the show coming up in Minnesota because I'm not feeling well, I'm not gonna go out of my way to make it to the show to ruin things for people in the future. It's just like I'm gonna hope for 2 more great tours to happen in the future with Napalm Death and GWAR and everyone else involved with it, rather than taking any kind of chances.
Well, sure. I mean, you know, and well, I mean, immediately in that particular gig, you know, people around you, basically, you know, it's, yeah, you know, that's the first thing, really. So,
Oh, for sure. And thinking about that as well too. I mean, obviously, worldwide news coverage is inundated with everything that's going on here in America and our reactions to COVID. I mean, some positive, so much negative. What is it over by you? I mean, is it similar to what's going on to America? Are people being smarter about it? What is going on by you?
I think people in the UK generally were sort of very cooperative with the measures that came in, you know. I was certainly. I kept to myself, or rather, we had what they call a bubble of six rule here, where after the first lockdowns, which was strictly don't go near other people, you know, they introduced a bubble of six where you could go and see people in other households. If you were in a household on your own, you could mix with, you know, other people, but it had to be like no more than, I can't remember exactly the rules now, but it was two households basically with six people. And so I stuck to that the whole way through. I didn't see anybody else, not my family who were like 180 miles away, not anybody, you know. So I kind of stuck to it. And people over here generally were, yeah, they stuck to it, you know. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I just kind of look at it like, as we've spoken about already, I look at it about consideration for others, less, you know, more vulnerable people than me, you know, so always trying to think of them, you know, before myself. So.
Oh, and I'm glad to see that you are that way too. And, you know, especially with the career that you've had to over 3 decades in Napalm alone. I mean, just with everything you do and what you believe in and what you stand for. I mean, it's always been on I've always felt to be on the right side of history and human rights and, you know, trying to teach people about about the right things. And, you know, it's very confrontational, like we talked about as well too, but sometimes people need that as well too. I mean, not everything can be just like smiley and happy. I mean, sometimes you got to be honest, you got to have that confrontation to really get a point across.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to have confrontations with people. I mean, it's just the nature of, you know, expressing those observations sometimes will get you confrontation, whether you want it or not. You know what I mean? That's the point to it, I suppose. But yeah, you know, I mean, that's the nature of those things. And yeah, going back, Josh, to something you said at the start of that question. I mean, the word career has never been a thing for me. I don't look upon Napalm as career. I look at it as a stepping stone in my life that I've been extremely fortunate to do. You know, a career to me sometimes feels like you're expressing it like a job, you know, which you may or may not like. For me, it was never that. I always felt very privileged to be able to express myself and the band, you know, artistically. And that's it for me. Never felt like a job to me. I never considered it as a career. I never kind of really indulged in career planning, you know, that would go with a career. You know, I just took it as it came. You know, sure, you know, you plan things and stuff, you know, you schedule stuff, but it was never as stiff as being a career. You know, it was always something different to me, you know.
You know, that's actually a great way to be able to look at it that way too. I mean, when you don't look at it as a career and you're able to just look at it as like a moment in your life and something that you've been able to continue on with for 3 decades. I mean, when you're able to be fortunate enough to have a situation where you can still speak your mind, you're able to tour the world, you're able to work with so many great musicians and known as an influence to so many bands after you started becoming known for who you are, and just knowing that the impact of what you have musically and in other aspects. I mean, when you can look at it that way rather than a career, it almost feels, I mean, not almost, I mean, I gotta imagine it's gonna feel much more fulfilling that way.
Well, no, I will say this. I mean, Napalm is liberating to me. You know, the day when I joined Napalm Death, it liberated me. Not that I was in shackles before that, but it liberated me in certain ways, you know, that I could do this, you know. And actually, in terms of how we express ourselves musically and lyrically. I mean, I would do it in any context. You know, I've always felt it was a major imposition to not be able to speak your mind wherever you are in the world, in whatever context you're in. You know, I refuse to accept that, you know, so it, to me, it's not even a thing, you know. It's yeah, like I say, it's I feel liberated almost in a lot of ways, you know, when I do Napalm Death, whatever I'm doing with Napalm Death.
So, you know, thinking about that as well, too, I mean, like you mentioned, being able to feel liberated with being in Napalm Death, and also mentioning about having stage fright when you are able to go out and play on stage. When,
yeah, it does, doesn't it sound like a kind of contradiction a little bit, that, you know?
well, yeah, and, you know, it's just like I was going to say with that, too. I mean, it's great to see that you're able to overcome those situations that's going on within your mind too, because, you know, even with myself, like I can get mixed up on my words or start to stutter a little bit when I'm trying to get say my words and try to get my points across too. And, you know, obviously for everyone it's going to be a little different, so the fact that you're able to get over those fears and you're able to still be yourself on stage, be yourself off stage as well too, and, you know, just not succumb to any kind of stage frights or any other mental things that can happen to a human,
Yeah,
is a great thing to see.
yeah, sure. I mean, the thing is, Josh, with stage fright, as I understand it, you know, the way I get it, I mean, there are some people that it affects them really deeply. It stops them from going on stage, and if they do go on, they have to almost be dragged on there. The thing with stage fright is, and this is the real funny thing about it, because it's a certain hurdle that as soon as you go out and start playing, it disappears. Do you know what I mean? It instantly disappears. But you can't make that, you can't sort of acknowledge that for your next gig. Yeah, you know that gig then in the past tense, as in the night before, you know you were fine once you got out there, but that message doesn't get through to your brain, you know. So the very next night you're going through it again, you know, the stage fright, you know, it's one of them. It's weird the way the human mind works, you know. So yeah, it's just the way it goes sometimes.
Oh yeah, and I can totally relate on my end, because this is my 799th interview that I've done since starting 10 years ago.
Wow,
And
okay.
every time that I do an interview, no matter if it's a brand new band, whether it's you, like before I get on the mic, making sure that everything's recording on my end, I still get so nervous. I still get scared myself too, whether everything's going to work right, whether
Yeah,
I'm going to say something stupid to begin with. I mean,
yeah,
there's so
it's
many
like
different things.
performance anxiety, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, because obviously, you know, it's a performance too, you know, when you got to speak to people in this kind of capacity, you know. So yeah, I totally get it, you know, I totally get it.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, and, you know, just like I was talking about before too, you know, even with dealing with all of that, and especially with dealing with the pandemic, where you don't even get the opportunity to be able to get back on stage, as terrifying as it could be with the outside influences and stage frights and everything else that can go into being in a touring band. I mean, when you're able to get back on stage after such a long time and being able to know that the first song went great and you're able to get into the rest of the sets, and just being able to let those inhibitions die down and you're able to just put on such a killer show. I mean, that's got to be a great feeling.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, I always love playing live with Napalm because, you know, the thing is, Napalm's such a burst of energy, you know. It's such you're unleashing something that's incredibly kinetic, you know, sonically. And that's a huge thrill. You know, would I have that same thrill if it was a band that wasn't, you know, abrasive and pushing the boundaries of musical convention and extremity, as I personally believe that Napalm does? No, I wouldn't get the same thrill, I don't think. If I was to join a band that was, you know, doing what a lot of other bands were doing in a particular subgenre, would I feel as excited? Probably not. you know, a band with a lot more restraint than Napalm Death has? Probably not. And so, yeah, I mean, Napalm really is the perfect band for me, because I just can't imagine myself really doing anything stylistically that kind of put the brakes on, you know, in comparison to Napalm Death. I just can't imagine it, you know. So
Oh, for sure. And taking that idea, but obviously in a different context. I mean, with obviously with the pandemic and all touring being canceled and everything. I mean, when uh, not being able to go on stage without being able to go on tour. I mean, did you feel like you were confined or restricted at all from being able to speak your mind, from being able to show yourself off in any ways, or was like the pandemic more of an issue for you, or
you
like
know,
how were you able to cope with all that?
no, you know what? I just put myself. I kind of got my head down and looked at it when the realization came that this was not going to be over in 5 minutes. I kind of put my head down. I was like, yeah, okay, what can I do? How am I going to survive? You know, like X million other people around the world. You know, how am I going to get through this? So I just put my head down, figured it out, and you know what? I spent most days getting up at 6 in the morning, going out on my bike, you know, endurance biking. That's one of my things. Around the coastline. I'm very lucky to live on the south coast in the UK. So I used to go out riding every morning. And yeah, you know, Napalm was always having to do things, even during the pandemic. There's always things going on in the background, you know, so I was always doing something. So I kept myself occupied. Yeah, I mean, there was no real means of you know, funding yourself, you know, during that period at all, really. But especially being musicians, it just wasn't happening, you know. So, but yeah, you know, mentally, in that respect, yeah, I just got my head down and I just got through it, you know. So I didn't feel constrained. Yeah, I couldn't perform with the band. We couldn't perform, couldn't do any of that. But in other ways, did I feel constrained? Not particularly. No, I didn't. No.
Oh, and yeah, just like you mentioned before, I mean, that's great. You live where you do live as well too. I mean, when you're able to get up at 6 in the morning and you're able to go out on your bike and start cycling, I mean, I gotta imagine that's just like a very beautiful imagery that's being able to go with the endurance biking as well too. I mean, seeing the world around you. And now, I mean, I imagine with where you are, I mean, it's got to be like all levels of being able to go biking and just being able to relax in that way as well too. I mean, like being able to shut off the world and just being able to just enjoy the view that you have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I say, um, like being around the house all the time, that's going to get to you, no matter who you are, I think. But I am lucky, you know. I literally walk out of where I live and like get on the bike, and like literally a minute and a half down the street is the beach, you know. So natural beauty can do great things for the mind. I think we know that by now, you know. I think that's kind of stating the obvious, maybe, but you know, from a personal point of view, it really helped me a lot. You know, I have a great appreciation for the natural world, you know, and obviously I'm really aggrieved, you know, that perhaps there's still a significant percentage of the world's population that doesn't understand, you know, about protecting it properly, you know, rather than letting it go to hell because of our need for things, you know, our need to amass things and to exploit things, you know. It really grieves me, that does, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes you just do need that reminder as well too. I mean, obviously, I think the world we need that, but sometimes just for the individual, just realizing, just like going outside, looking at the view that you have. I mean, if especially if you can go on the countryside and you're able to just see like the view, the landscape, the agriculture, the landscapes, the cliffs, the oceans. There's just like there's so many different things that you can appreciate about the world while we still have it. So
Yeah, I used to go, when I lived back in Birmingham, you know, where I'm from. I used to go very often, just spend whole afternoons under a tree in the park just watching the world go by. Didn't take anything with me. Didn't even take a book, and I love books, but I just used to sit under a tree and just watch the world go by, people included, just observe the world around me, because that if you isolate a particular space and you just observe that over a few hours, the world moves significantly within that time, and it's fascinating to watch sometimes. I appreciate things like that. I really do. It might not be for everybody, but I get it. I totally get it. So.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, I mean, the fact that we're still fortunate enough to be able to be in a situation where we can take the time to be able to enjoy those things, whether it is sitting underneath a tree and just watching the world go by, whether it is going underneath that same tree, reading a book, or, just like a daydreaming, just like looking up into the sky and just seeing what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let your mind go, because I mean, there's enough stresses and strains on the mind, in a lifetime. Once in a while, just let yourself go. Just don't even think. Just let yourself go and just go with the world around you. Don't force it. In terms of your mental analysis. Just let it come to you rather than you like running into it almost.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And, I think with that, I think that's a great note to end on too. I think that's a great, like, little positive thing to be able to take away while we still have it, and being able to just enjoy those things, try to get rid of the other terrible aspects of the world and just enjoy some of the positives while we still have it. And
yeah, we have. Well, I want to be a little bit more optimistic than that. I want to say, I don't want to say while we still have it, I want to say, I want to think it will always be there, yeah, I have to be optimistic about that. The thought of a world without, the natural aspects that we know, everyday things, just is unthinkable to me, so.
Yeah. And, at least on my end, I mean, it can be so hard to be optimistic, especially within the last couple of years, the pandemic, and over here in the States, over the last like 6-7 years now, especially with at least on my end, like the Trump regime that started happening here. So much of like the negative aspects have been going on, and you see that online and everything. So, those negative things can eventually hit you at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think you absolutely have the right approach, trying to be more optimistic like that, and just try to keep imagining a world like that.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine a world like that. You know what I mean? It's not because I'm in denial. I just, hopefully we will, as human beings, do our utmost to stop that from being taken away from us,
Yeah, definitely. And, with that, I think that's a great note to end on. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to be able to talk to me, talking about this upcoming tour with GWAR that I'm happy to see is still going to be going forward. Hopefully everything can continue on and be able to work out the way that it should, and things leading into 2022, hopefully getting back into more regular things when it comes into festival shows, when it comes into touring, and whatever happens with the next Napalm release, whenever that eventually happens. I mean, it was great to be able to talk to you about pretty much everything going on with that.
Yeah, no worries, Josh. Anytime.
Oh, awesome. Well, again, I thank you for that. I'm really hoping I can make it out to the Minneapolis show, barring anything else that happens. And it'd be a great show to be able to come back from the pandemic and just see a great diverse bill, a bill that I love seeing different kinds of bands together rather than just seeing one type of music going on. And that's exactly what this show is, and something I need. And I imagine for you guys as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, awesome. Well, like I said, it's been great to be able to talk to you. Hopefully you'll be able to do that again. And I appreciate your time. Can't wait to be able to show off this interview. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Oh, thanks, Josh. Anytime, man. Anytime.